All right, well, welcome everybody to the August 8th edition of Garden Hour. My name is Amanda Bachman. I'm the Pesticide Education and Urban Entomology Field Specialist based here in Pierre, South Dakota. And I'll be visiting with you tonight about some, cool insects and some things to think about for fall, but I am joined by two of my colleagues. We've got Dr. Sean Toporek. And if they, turn on their videos and unmute, I'll ask them real quick what they're going to be talking about. But for a hot second, I thought they were just going to leave me out here by myself. But Sean is our specialty crop pathologist and the director of the local food center based on campus. Sean, what are you going to be covering tonight?
So today I'm going to be talking to you about powdery mildew in the garden.
Cool. I'm pretty sure I have powdery mildew like every year, and I'm excited to hear about all the things that I can just be doing, but I choose not to because I'm a very lazy gardener sometimes. And we have Dr. John Ball, our extension forest entomologist, and about 5 other jobs that if I, listed them out, we would still be here at like 8:05. But John, it looks like you're back in your office at Brookings. It's always, where in the world is John Ball instead of Carmen Sandiego? What are you covering with us tonight?
All right, well, a number of things, but for all our viewers, if you're looking at Amanda, what you can't see in the background is she has these aquariums filled with cockroaches. So kind of tells you who her friends are. But for me, I'm going to be talking about some insect problems that are occurring around the state. And then most importantly, we're already seeing fall color. And I'll tell you why. So chat with you later.
I was going to say, yes, I noticed one of my trees out front, a black walnut, had some leaves starting to turn yellow. And I was like, oh, no, I know
That's
what
right.
that means.
It's not a good thing.
Yeah, not a good thing. So I will turn it over to Sean. If you want to go ahead and share your screen, I will let you know if everything looks good. Yep.
Whoop, sorry.
Whoop. It was there for a brief minute. I saw the powdery mildew family tree and then it disappeared.
Spoilers.
Yes, spoiler alert.
Sorry, there we go. All right, so yes, I'm going to give you a cool little talk today about powdery mildew in the garden. So this talk is going to kind of go into 4 different sections here. So first is, what is powdery mildew, which I'm sure you all know what it is. A little highlight about how different crops actually means we have different species of powdery mildew pathogens we're dealing with. I want to talk a little bit about pathogen biology, and then I want to talk about the different control methods and the home remedies you might be able to try. So powdery mildew is a disease you've all seen, and it's caused by an obligate fungal family of plant pathogens. And so what obligate means is that plant pathologists like me can't actually work with it in culture. We have to work with it on a living host. And so while that might not mean really anything to you as a farmer or a gardener, it actually has a lot to do with the evolution of powdery mildews, which I'll kind of get into a little bit later. The initial symptoms, which you can actually go out and look for kind of at the beginning of the season, are these little yellow spots right here. And so those little chlorotic spots are eventually going to sporulate. You're going to get more chlorotic spots that sporulate, and eventually you'll have a leaf like this up here in the top right that is just covered in this white powder. And what that is, as you kind of zoom in here, is lots and lots and lots of spores, and an innumerable amount of spores. So that is what you're seeing, is a nice coat of white sporulation. So what is not powdery mildew is this variety-dependent natural variegation. So I get a lot of questions about this. This is just leaves with more than one color. That's what variegation means. And so this is a squash. There's some zucchini that look like this. And from a distance, you might think you have some powdery mildew outbreaking in your garden, but this is perfectly normal and nothing to worry about. So now different crops equals different species of powdery mildew pathogens. And so the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I actually had heard some misconceptions from growers and farmers that the powdery mildew they're seeing on one plant can spread to the plant that's next to it. So there's actually a bunch of different species that cause powdery mildew. And you, just like you come from a family and you have a family tree, so does powdery mildew. And so ironically, the oldest member of that family actually was a powdery mildew of trees. And so when we look at this tree here, I pulled out some species, and this is the powdery mildew family tree here. This is a subset of over 500 species. So there's a lot of stuff blowing around out there. Now, for the most part, a different species is only going to infect one host. So Potospheroxanthi is the causal organism of cucurbit powdery mildew. Oidium lycopersii causes tomato powdery mildew, does not infect cucurbits. And then Erysiphe pisci causes pea powdery mildew. So all three of these pathogens cause the same symptoms on different plants, but they can't cause those symptoms on different plants. And so a good case study, and I saw this at a couple different farms I've visited so far, is that they would have field bindweed kind of growing around in their fields, and it would have powdery mildew. It would sort of be wrapping up the stems of their cucurbits. And so here it is growing on a zucchini. But that powdery mildew is never going to be a problem for that zucchini. It's actually a different species. So we have Erysiphe convolvuli, var convolvuli, some Harry Potter spell name, but it's never going to cause disease on your zucchini. That has to be caused by Potospheroxanthi. There are exceptions because this is biology, not everything is concrete. There's host jumping that has been documented. So the one that I'm most familiar with is in cucurbits. If you plant verbena near your cucurbits, those can actually, the pathogen can move in between them. So one can serve as a reservoir host for the other. So that spot I showed you earlier is the infection site. And so what's happening under that little yellow spot is this fungal organism that produces mycelia. So if you think about like rotting bread in your pantry, you're looking at mycelium in there. And what this is right here, these little squid-like structures are the little feeding structures of the pathogen. So they're actually sucking the nutrients out of that spot in the leaf and turning it yellow. And what the pathogen is going to want to do is, once it realizes it's running out of food there, is to kind of go into survival mode. So it starts to sporulate. That's sort of its I have to get out of here stage. And what's interesting about powdery mildew is that, unlike most fungal pathogens that need a humid environment to sporulate, it can do just fine sporulating in a dry environment. So it's actually particularly suited to be a disease here in South Dakota, where it's kind of drier than, say, in the Southeast or something like that. And so that sporulation, you get this little stem of spores here. Those will break apart. They're produced in such large numbers. They'll be rain dispersed, wind dispersed. Here's a little disease cycle just showing these little spores flying around, affecting a leaf. A new infection starts, more spores are produced. The volume is so high that even if you are growing in a greenhouse, it can come through the greenhouse vents. So there's really no sealing yourself off from this unless you're literally sealed off, but that's not good for the plants. So that leads into control methods and home remedies. Host resistance is available for powdery mildew and pretty much anything that you're growing. Powdery mildew is a problem on vegetables, field crops, you name it. And a lot of breeding effort has gone into making powdery mildew resistant varieties. And so this is just a screenshot of a common site, Johnny Seeds. I use it for a lot of my vegetable purchasing. A lot of times what they'll have is like a little subsection, and it'll have, they have these little disease resistance codes. And so S, CMV, PM. If you click on this little information tab right here, it'll actually spell out, this is scab resistant, this is cucumber mosaic virus resistant, and then there's powdery mildew resistance listed on there. So just do a little bit of front-end research, and you can save yourself a lot of headache by just knowing that there are cultivars available with powdery mildew resistance. You don't have to spray anything. Fungicides. So there are plenty of fungicides that are effective at controlling powdery mildew on a wide variety of crops. I don't want to spell them out for you for each crop. That would be a pretty boring presentation. But if you look at the 2023 Midwest Vegetable Production Guide, which is a freely available, awesome resource, you'll get a list of every labeled fungicide for your crop that controls powdery mildew. And it also has a bunch of other cool horticultural tips about growing that crop, about insect pest management. And a lot of times when I have a new issue, either at the student farm that I manage or in my research plots, I usually kind of look to this as like a first step for my next decision making. Biofungicides. So a lot of people in South Dakota that I've encountered don't really use fungicides anyway. So if you're more interested in biofungicides, there's a lot of different effective products that are out there. Not all of them are labeled for every single crop that you're probably growing. And so I'm really happy I made this talk because I found this resource that Cornell has. Someone did some amazing work that must have maybe happened over the pandemic or something, but someone had combed through decades of what are called plant disease management reports. So when I myself as a plant pathologist do some field trial, some spray efficacy trials, I put them in this website called plant disease management reports, and they just kind of stay there and sit there forever. Someone pulled all those out, listed them in an Excel table, and you can actually look at every single product trial that's ever happened from like 1990 up until 2023. So that's what this second link is. And this third link is actually a table that summarizes all that up to 2021. So I'm going to post all these at the end. But what that table kind of looks like is a big spreadsheet like this, and it'll show all the different crops on the left-hand side, diseases aside from powdery mildew, and then the number of trials with a certain product and how many of them were actually effective. So it'll give you more information than you really need, but it's a really awesome resource. I'm going to use it for a really long time, I think. Neem oil. So I use this a lot at the student farm to control insects. I was just looking for some data to support that it works, and I stumbled upon a cannabis trial that was done out in Canada. And so this is some neem efficacy data over here on the right-hand side from 3 different trials. And just to kind of support that neem oil has been shown to work is this data set here. So the neem is the red line, and it was always significantly more effective than the non-treated control. You have different elemental options if you're trying to go the more organic route. So sulfur is effective. It's been controlling powdery mildew since we used it to control powdery mildew as the first fungicide of grapes. And what's really good about it is that it volatilizes. So a lot of times when you spray products, it hits the top of the leaf and then only deals with the infections on the top of the leaf. But on the underside of the leaf, disease can still develop down there. What sulfur does is actually volatilizes and reaches underneath the leaf after application. So it's like doubly effective for that property that it has. But I want to caution, and I heard this a long time ago, that if you use sulfur and then use oils on top of that, you can actually bring that sulfur into the plant, and that can cause phytotoxicity. So don't use oils right after sulfur. You need some kind of lag time on that. Sulfur is good outside of the plant, kills it when it's inside the plant. Copper is not effective. So copper works on a lot of different fungal pathogens, but the data has shown that it doesn't work for powdery mildew. Here's just an example of that in tomato. The 2 green treatments here are copper-based products, Coside and New Farm. And here's your untreated control here. And there was no significant statistical differences. So copper is not a good option for you. Just stick with sulfur if you're looking at an elemental option. Home remedies. So if you Google home remedies for powdery mildew, you will get about 900 articles from every random garden website that's ever existed. And it's very hard for you to know what to trust. There's WikiHow articles about how to control powdery mildew, and I would not trust WikiHow, but I was actually surprised. So I chose some of the more common ones that 10% milk actually works. I found a few studies that looked at it, but I just wanted to show you this one on strawberry, that 10% milk application actually significantly reduces it. So you had about 5% diseased fruit here in the strawberry trial compared to about 60% diseased fruit in the non-treated control. So the timing is important, but 10% milk is an effective tool. Plant oils. So this study looked at a bunch of different oils, some derived from peppermint, thyme, lemongrass, and all these oils were effective. And what is happening is sort of what's happening with neem oils, is that you're putting this oil on the surface of the leaves and it's preventing the infection from the pathogen, but it's also this oily surface that's not allowing your pathogen to sporulate through those oils. So plant oils and neem oils can kind of work the same way. Baking soda. I found this published back in 1990. Someone looked at different concentrations of baking soda. At these lower two concentrations, we still had about 90% infection in both. And then in this higher concentration, they saw control, but they also saw phytotoxicity. So baking soda, although it can be effective, is phytotoxic at that effective rate. So I would not recommend baking soda. Vinegar was the last one I really found. There was not a lot of data out there, but I saw it all the time. Here's a study on rose powdery mildew. They conducted 7 trials and only 2 of them actually used wine vinegar. In one of those trials, it was effective. So here it is showing that it's significantly different than the non-treated control. But then in the other trial they conducted, it wasn't significantly different. So there's really not much evidence for me to say, yes, it's an effective strategy to use vinegar. Lastly, there's a weird thing called the Cornell formula. And I saw this so many times and I spent so much of my life trying to find out where this came from. So you would say it was from Cornell, but every single thing said Cornell scientists say, and I couldn't find any evidence of a Cornell scientist ever saying this, but it's this kind of little 3-step recipe: horticulture oil, baking soda, dishwashing detergent. There's no data on if it works. I have no idea where this came from, and this is going to bother me for the rest of my life. Cannot support this because I don't know anything about it. Lastly, I just want to close out that anything that's not systemic, and what I mean by systemic is that if you apply this product, it will circulate through the plant, will go within the plant and actually control by eliminating the organism within inside it. Some fungicides do that, some biopesticides do that, but if it does not do that, you have to spray this product on a 5 to 7 day cycle. So say this is your 10% milk that you're spraying on your infected leaf surface here, by sheer force of the spray and from the milk, it will eliminate it for a time, but that infection is still there under your leaf. So if you let it go too long, you'll actually have sporulation again. So you need to stay on top of it as soon as disease starts to develop. And I think I may have gone over time, but thank you. I hope you enjoyed that.
So just a couple questions. One is for the viewers at home, can you tell them what phytotoxicity means?
That is just a chemical going into the plant and just kind of physically damaging the plant. So it's actually killing the plant because that chemical is at too high of a concentration to be healthy for it. So.
And generally, like, what does that look like physically? Is like the leaves are, burns, like plant just depends on the plant.
Yeah, probably like necrotic, probably like maybe some white bleaching sometimes. I actually don't know off the top of my head, but that's my best guess. I'm assuming it manifests differently.
And then we had a question here in the chat about neem oil. Is neem oil the same thing as horticulture oil, and can neem be used for dormant oil for trees?
I don't think neem is the same as horticulture oil, and then I do not know the answer to that second part. I'm sorry.
Maybe John knows the answer to the second part. It has the word trees in it.
Yeah, John, help.
Yeah, tag you in. They asked about trees too early. Yeah, and I will say with like some of the different products as far as, neem and some of the different like horticulture oils out there, like always look for sort of the active ingredient on that label too. There should be, in addition to the product trade name, sort of the more scientific name about what is in that product that's making it effective. But yeah, John, any thoughts on that dormant oil on trees?
Hang in here. Okay, so back it up again. Dormant oil, what about it?
Can neem be used for dormant oil for trees?
Sure.
Okay.
But again, that's a broad statement. So I don't recommend it for everything all the time, but yes, it has its place.
Yep. Cool. Well, if anybody has additional questions for Sean or any of our other panelists, feel free to throw those into the Q&A, and I will sort of field those at the end of each of our segments. And I think I'm going next with some fun bugs. I thought about going to grab a hissing cockroach. I might do that at the final question and answer because I have some really majestic specimens that deserve their time in the spotlight. But maybe they'll have to have a photo shoot so they can be on the last episode of Garden Hour before the end of the season. But I was out this weekend and wanted to share some of the neat lepidopterans that I found and that also came my way from the local master gardeners. So for those of you out there working in community gardens and taking pictures of the cool stuff you find, I love to see what cool bugs are out there. And so on the right, from the Prairie Potters Master Gardeners, they sent in the hummingbird clearwing moth that was visiting the bell tower garden here in town. And these are a really adorable moth with a stockier body, and you can see that the wings have these clear sections. A lot of times, many of our species of butterflies and moths, their wings are entirely covered with these little flaky scales. If you've ever like touched a moth or anything like that, or tagged monarchs, you get a little bit of the scales rubbing off on your fingers. But on the clearwing moths, you can see that the membranous wing underneath, because they don't have scales over the entire wing. And these can sometimes get confused for hummingbirds. There are some species in the Sphingidae family, the sphinx moths, that are much larger. The hummingbird clearwing is sort of one of the smaller ones, maybe about a 2-inch wingspan, versus some of our things like the white-lined sphinx can really end up being 3 inches or more across. So those are pretty cool to see if you've got any like evening blooming sort of trumpet shaped flowers. The sphinx moths really enjoy those. And then on the left, I've got a tiger swallowtail. You can see the edges of its wings are pretty ragged. So this one has been flying around for probably a while. It's had a rough summer and it's probably nearing the end of its lifespan, but I did see some fresher specimens that were flying around, and I know some folks out at Owyhee downstream also saw some tiger swallowtails recently as well. So if you see some of these big, really striking yellow and black butterflies, odds are really good that it's a tiger swallowtail. We don't really have any other butterflies that are that large and that color. So if you've got flowers out there, take a look. There's probably some cool butterflies, and I know the monarchs are going to be sort of starting to think about flying south soon, so they need those fall flowers. And then I just wanted to throw a shout out to the bumblebees. They have definitely picked up in activity versus sort of this time last year. We've had a little bit more rain, especially here in the Pierre area. We finally had about 1 inch over the weekend, which was really nice. And this bumblebee here is visiting my cup plant, which is, in the Asteraceae family. But you can see it's very much dusted with pollen from the hollyhocks that are still kind of blooming along. So if you've got hollyhocks, bumblebees do love those. They get like entirely in the flower, and then you can kind of see where they've been as they've got that pollen stuck all over their bodies. But the fuzziness of the bees is really what makes them such good pollinators. Our bumblebees and our honeybees and some of our other species will actually pack pollen onto their legs or certain structures on their bodies. But oftentimes they're just getting in there and getting completely dusted in it. And then when they go visit another flower, it gets rubbed off. So it's very cool, especially when things like the purple prairie clover are blooming, or lead plant, things that have a really bright orange pollen. You can pretty much identify where bees have been visiting. So if you've got some bumblebees out there, give them a little insect high five. They're doing a great job, especially if you're somebody that has tomatoes or some of our larger cucurbits. They're some of our really good pollinators of those plants. I also wanted to throw an orthopteran, member of the grasshopper and cricket family, in here. This is a katydid. It's very well camouflaged. In the middle there, you can see the sort of orange eyes, and everything else about it is green. But this little guy just kind of hopped over as I was weeding around my tomatoes, freeing them from their kochia prisons. But this is just, one of our insects that makes sort of noises during the summer, and might not get noticed as much as its more robust counterparts in the grasshopper families. But I wanted to point this out because they always look so startled to me when they're getting their picture taken, and they can kind of have little like alien faces and really long antennae. That is one of the sort of characteristics of the katydid family is their antennae are actually longer than their body. And so you can kind of see about half of this one's antenna, and then they sort of fade out because they are very slender. But you may have some little green gremlins hiding out in your potted plants. These are, you know, they do eat some plant material. I have sometimes noticed them munching on some of my ornamental annuals, but they usually don't occur in large numbers, so it's not something that we really worry about managing. I did want to start pointing out some of the insects that you want to start thinking about as we move into the fall. We've got a multicolored Asian lady beetle there on the left. A lot of times people are like, but they're not ladybugs. They are ladybugs. They're just an introduced species of ladybug that was not native to North America. You can distinguish them from the native species by the M that they have on their thorax, that like white pattern kind of makes an M shape. And they tend to have a lot of spots, although some of them can sometimes have no spots. We've got our picture wing fly in the center there, and then I also threw in a western conifer seed bug over there on the right. But these, one thing that they all have in common, despite being in different orders, is that they will all move indoors in the fall looking for a place to spend the winter. So they will overwinter as adults, especially the conifer seed bug and the lady beetle. So they're not feeding or reproducing indoors, but odds are that you don't see where they enter and then they start appearing and you think they're increasing in number. But these are the things that everyone, you know, I get tons of questions when they start showing up inside and people want to know how to stop them. Now is the time to start working on those solutions. Some folks will use a perimeter spray sort of around the foundation of their house or a garage, so that anytime something like crawls across that perimeter, it picks up enough insecticide and dies. You definitely want to check the label directions on those if you have, you know, kids or pets. You know, things about drying time and how long they're effective are important to note. But really, with those, you still have an insect inside, it's just dead. You really do want to be looking at those entry points like basement windows, screens, door sweeps, that kind of stuff, and you know, doing some of those home repairs to make those areas a little less permeable to these insects. If you've got an attic, that's another place where a lot of these insects will enter. You know, size-wise, that western conifer seed bug is maybe about half an inch to 3/4 of an inch long. So that's one of the bigger ones. Whereas, you know, the flies are a little bit smaller than your average housefly. And obviously the lady beetles are a pretty standard ladybug size. So these are not, you know, particularly huge insects, but they still can utilize some, you know, sort of smaller entryways. So the best defense on them is a good offense, and your home will never be 100% sealed against the outside. That would be bad for, you know, air quality and your health. So you will have, you know, probably a few critters making their way indoors, but if you start doing, you know, some of those repair lists now, you might get ahead of them before they really start moving in September. Once we start getting those cooler nights, especially if you're, you know, West River or those higher elevations where you can get some, you know, frost in early September, that's really what is going to be triggering some of these insects to start their search for an overwintering location. So these are just, you know, some of our common offenders, and then I included, we've got the fall household pest article that we wrote a couple years ago that also includes some other ones that you might see as well. So if you have insects indoors and need them identified, obviously shoot them through the hotline, send them to me. We're happy to take a look, but hopefully you'll know to keep your eyes out for some of our sort of common culprits. And I did want to throw in a plug before I head out next week. I won't be here next Tuesday. I'll be in Des Moines. But I did want to throw out Bugapalooza one more time on August 19th. State Fair. I know John will be giving a talk, I think, one day. I'll be there 2 days as well. So you can come catch us live in person, or just stop by and say hey to the Master Gardeners and pick up some resources from them. And then Insect Fest on September 9th in Brookings at McCrory Gardens. So all places where you can come ask me about insects, and possibly for Insect Fest, depending on how the weather is, I might bring some of my hissing cockroaches with me. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop my share and see what's up in the Q&A and the chat. Let's see. Looks like got some flea beetles. Ants and bees seem to be eating them. The leaves are curling, but only on about 1/10 of the stems. So I'll say that the bees definitely aren't eating them. Bees are not carnivorous. The bees are just going to be visiting those flowers because they're flowering and they want the pollen. Or red osier though, that's a dogwood, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm like, at first I read it quick and I thought, I was like, is this just some sort of fancy plant? But no, it's a dogwood. Okay, so the dogwood's not flowering now. That was in the spring. I'd say we probably want to see a picture. The leaves curling could be what, some sort of aphid?
Are we talking about the dogwood?
Yep.
And you're looking at a picture, we're not.
No, none of us are looking at a picture. I was saying that whoever sent in that question, we've got a Julie.
And Julie's dogwood, it has curling leaves.
Yes.
That's probably the dogwood sawfly.
Oh, cool.
It's out right now. I can find them. And what they do is they curl the leaf, and if you open up the leaf, you'll find it curled as well into the leaf. But they're pretty good feeders, and it doesn't take long to go from curled leaves to leaves that are chewed everywhere but the veins. They're like kids. They don't like to eat the crust. But this at this time, I've seen them defoliate dogwoods in about a week from they look perfect to they're gone. And I don't know where Julie is, but we've had some rains almost throughout the state recently, and that's kind of tricked some of the dogwoods into flowering. We have them on campus that are in bloom.
Yeah.
And that, so, sometimes if you go through a drought and then it rains, you'll actually get a number of spring and early summer flowering plants that will rebloom. Oh, Julie's saying it's a little black bug. So nope,
flowering.
It would not be the sawfly then, because they'd be a big fat round bug.
Although maybe go out and check just in case, like uncurl some of those leaves and just make sure, because it's entirely possible to have both things.
Oh yeah, good point. I mean, the little black bugs could be nothings.
Yeah,
just kind of wandering around.
Yeah, because I would say, we really don't, flea beetle wise, we tend to see a lot of damage, on your cruciferous crops, on your alyssum, on, that kind of stuff. I don't know if there's any particular trees that flea beetles are, attack.
No, not really. I mean, we have flea weevils. Julie said she has a picture, just needs to know how to send it. Hopefully you can find somebody, Julie, that can work that on your phone. And I know that can be a problem sometimes, particularly with these newer phones. But, this is one of those cases where a picture literally is worth 1,000 words.
Yep. And I know we've got, you can email it to any one of us or to your closest garden hotline, which would be in Rapid City. And I think if I scroll up, I can grab the hotline info for you. But yeah, shoot that picture to them and we will take a look at it.
But make sure you tell them to send it on to Amanda and myself, so that we're able to get that. Because now you got my curiosity up.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, what is going on with this?
Those are the
dogwood?
Fun ones. What the heck it
is? But yeah, no pictures. For everyone out there, we love to get pictures, and if you send them to us before Tuesday, you may see it show up in a slide. So if you send us a question or end of the week or whatever, I go through my emails and the Ask extension and see what's been answered. Do bumblebees kill or harvest other bees? So while John's talking, I'll check out the YouTube and see what that is, but bumblebees are not, like I said, they're not noted carnivores. They may, much like honeybees, they will remove dead bees from their colony. So without looking at the video yet, maybe that is what's happening, but they're not predaceous. We do have some ground nesting bee species that are what are called kleptoparasites. They'll sort of steal the nests of other bees, but that does not include bumblebees either. So I'll take a look at that and get back to you guys at the end, because now I'm also curious about that.
Well, I think we all want to watch the video,
Yeah,
but we're
I was
not.
gonna say, I'm not pulling up a YouTube link on live television.
Yeah. That would be your last day at work.
Yeah, exactly. No, we'll do some screening and then we'll get back to it.
Yeah, there you go.
But while I do that, I will turn it over to Dr. John Ball. And if you guys have other questions, throw those in the Q&A. It's easier for us to find them there than the chat. So John, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. And now we're all waiting to see what the video is, as well as a hissing cockroach. I don't know about the rest of you, but she's traveling with hissing cockroaches. Let me know the hotels you're staying in. I know some places I may want to avoid, but with that, I will start sharing my stuff. All right, here. Let's hope I'm sharing it correctly here. There we go. All right. As most of our viewers know, I like to start off with a little bit on growing degree days, and it gets less important as the season progresses, mainly because most of our insect activity and most of our plant activity, by that I mean the flowering and such, is already over. We're kind of looking towards fall, but nevertheless, it's kind of interesting to look at the numbers. And if you notice, the Black Hills are still lagging, and they were ahead at the beginning. And for all of our West River viewers, you've experienced a slightly cooler summer than most of us had, and certainly a wetter summer. There has not been a week yet that I've been working out West River that it hasn't rained on me for at least part of the day, where I can go down to Turner County, for example, until this last couple of weeks where they've been getting rains, where it's just been bone dry and hot. And I realize some of the Black Hills has also been kind of warm for a few days, but believe me, if you want to see heat, it's East River. And by the way, for everybody, East River, if you want to see mosquitoes, go West River. The bikers that are out there this week, if they're camping, I hope they brought some bug repellent, because this year they're actually going to need it. But what are we seeing blooming right now? It's our panicle hydrangeas. They've been blooming for, about 3 weeks now. And they're one of our late summer flowering plants, and they're almost bomb proof. By that, very difficult to kill. They used to have a single color, this one, but now we have a lot that are pink. Pinkly Winkly is one of my favorites. You got to love that name. As well as some that are kind of red, strawberry, for example. So if you haven't considered them, you might want to take a look. It'll probably be about the only plant you're going to see at the garden center that is just blooming profusely. As I mentioned earlier, because of the rains, we are getting a number of plants that are out putting out a few flowers here and there. There's a couple of lilacs that are starting to rebloom. There's magnolias that are reblooming. In fact, they commonly will if you get little rains at this time of year after a drought. We've kind of fooled them into thinking it's spring in a sense. We're also going to start seeing some fruit begin to ripen now. The apricots are already kind of come and gone. Plums are beginning to fade in terms of fruit production. And that peaches are just about there. I was looking at some in Murdo a week or two ago. And apples are just starting. We do have a couple of our early season apples that are beginning to produce fruit. By that, I mean harvestable fruit. We're just about there. And then, of course, we're going to see fruit all the way up until October of sometime. We have some the Haraldsons, Harold Reds, that are fairly late. And I like those. The later apples tend to be a little crisper. Not always, but they tend to be. And so I tend to like those, as many of our early season apples tend to be more for the baking, and apple pies are coming along. As a reminder, and I'll discuss this later in the season, but if you're out there getting ready to pick apples, and as they say, there's a couple of them that are just getting ready. A reminder that if you want to pick the perfect apple, you would hold a bag underneath it and catch it as it drops. Now, we're not going to do that, of course, but you want to pick it as close to dead ripe as possible. And a good way to check is when you go up to an apple that you think is just about there, the color's perfect in that, you don't pull it. If you have to pull it off the stem, it's not fully ripe yet. What you want to do is take your palm of your hand, put it underneath the apple, and slightly lift up. If it breaks away, then you picked a ripe apple. And when I worked in Michigan, we used to have to teach people how to do that, because on a U-pick operation, you'd have kids come out there, and I literally saw them pulling branches. The apples were so attached to them still. So remember, hand underneath, lift it up. If it breaks, you picked a fully ripe apple. And then we have some fruit that we don't eat and don't pick. Honey locust pods are appearing on a lot of trees. Now, honey locust tends to alternate. 1 year a very heavy crop, the next year almost none, the following year a very heavy crop, and they're not all synchronized. But around where I live, the few of them seem to kind of figured it out and work together. And this year is going to be another heavy year. And I'm not kidding when it's a heavy year. The ground is littered with them by fall. There's not much you can do with them. The green pods were used as cattle feed during the Second World War. Note that was a time period we were trying to make use of everything. We've kind of since stopped doing that, but they are edible for cattle. You can make a beer out of them. That also was something that was tried during the Second World War. And for some of our very old viewers, they might remember all the substitutes that were developed during the Second World War to help avoid shortages. And we don't make beer out of them anymore either. Instead, we just rake them up. They're a real mess. Nothing really likes to eat them and use them. This is believed to be one of the favorite foods for mastodons. And most you've never seen a mastodon. You'd have to be real old to fit that category. But if you wandered around South Dakota 10,000, 12,000 years ago, and I'm probably wrong with the dates, they get fuzzy in my old age, you might have experienced them wandering around feeding on these things. They're about one of the few critters that can eat these and poop out the seed, and the seed germinates. So we do have a lot of critters that'll eat them, but the seeds really don't germinate after they poop them out. For us now, it's just an annoyance, and we rake them up. Many of the cultivars are sold as fruitless, and most of them are not going to produce a lot of fruit. Most cultivars will still produce a fruit or two, and we certainly can deal with that. But some of the older cultivars just produce an abundance of fruit, and that can be quite annoying. Well, another annoyance out there is the emerald ash borer. Now, as a reminder to everybody, we have confirmed emerald ash borer in Union County, Lincoln County, and Minnehaha County. And in fact, no matter where you live in Lincoln or Minnehaha County, you either have emerald ash borer near you now, or it will be soon. Now, I've surveyed some communities, and we still cannot find it. Garrison is one we looked through recently, and I cannot find trees that have the classic symptoms, nor were we able to find any branches that were able to find any signs of emerald ash borer in. And we have other communities where it's very, very light still. And then there's others, such as Canton, where you cannot go down any street and not see standing dead trees already. Sioux Falls has done an outstanding job of managing emerald ash borer. They've been removing unwanted ash, by that ash that are not going to be treated, since 2018. and they're making great headway in that. And my hat off to them in that they are avoiding going through the staggering losses some communities have. As an example, I was out east, Rochester, New York community, about 250,000 people, metro area probably more. So bigger than Sioux Falls, but not that much. Ash population, quite similar because they can plant more trees. And I was talking to one tree company that had the contract to remove ash, and they were removing 500 trees a week at one point. And if you drive through Rochester now, you'll still find trees that nobody took down, standing next to power lines in some cases, standing next to houses. And again, those trees can crumble very quickly. So I urge all communities in South Dakota to figure out how many ash you have, public ash, and start developing a plan on how you're going to deal with it, because sooner or later you'll all be impacted by it. In the areas in which we have confirmed emerald ash borer, the insects are about what we call the third instar. They form 4 different instars, 4 different molts, if you will, for the larvae. The third instar is a little bit bigger, as you can see here at the end of the finger. They're big enough now that they're actually etching the sapwood, and you can see this one's actually cutting into the wood. By doing that, they're not only severing the phloem tissue, which is moving the sugars from the leaves to the roots, they're also severing the sapwood that is moving the water from the roots to the top of the tree. So right about now is when we start seeing infested trees have leaves drop, turn yellow, wilt a little bit, usually near the top, because essentially that portion of the canopy is being cut off. And then Amanda didn't mention them, or if she did, I didn't hear her at that point. But our annual cicadas are out. They're not as numerous as they were last year. That buzzing is not throughout the neighborhood as loud as it was. And I don't find as many cicada killers out there, something that Amanda and I talked about a lot last year. And the only reason I mentioned cicadas is since they're dropping out of trees now, and you can find them on the ground in the morning when you step out there. I am getting people that are picking them up because they're dead and taking pictures of them on extra rulers, which I appreciate, because Amanda and I both like a scale when you take a picture of an insect. And they say, I think I found emerald ash borer. No, you didn't. It's a cicada. And they're out every year. But, people say, well, I found this kind of greenish bug, and knowing emerald ash borer, emerald meaning emerald green, they think perhaps they found one, and it's not. I certainly appreciate them sending it in, because if they're not sure, send us a picture. Happy to look at it. Pleased that it isn't. But, sooner or later, someone's probably going to take a picture of a real emerald ash borer. It's happened in other states where the first time they find a community is somebody found the adult. So continue to send the pictures in, but I'm pleased to report we have a number of towns out there into which we do not have emerald ash borer, but we certainly have a few cicadas out there still. And this is a minor problem in the state. And by that, I mean just one little area north of Pringle, a couple of thousand acres. But the pine looper is just defoliating every tree. It did it last year, and it came back again. Normally the populations crash after 2 years. Hopefully this one will. But there's the caterpillars. They almost look like twigs as they get bigger. And they're getting to the size now, and you can, now that I showed you what the caterpillar looks like, maybe even notice this one right in the center of the picture. It looks like part of the twig. In about another week or two, they'll be as big as the twigs. By that, I mean almost as round. And they just devour needles then like corn on the cob. And so the areas that saw defoliation last year are going to see defoliation again this year. Problem with that is pines really don't tolerate 2 years of defoliation very well. So I'm expecting to see some mortality next year. The problem is we don't know which trees yet. It's kind of random, but if a quarter of the trees were dead next year in the area that had been impacted, that won't surprise me. All the literature in the past say after about 2 years, it disappears again for about 30 years. That's how often we see it, about 30 years. Now, it doesn't mean they've all, quote, disappeared, but the population crashes because everything that wants to eat it eats it. And you find a few fluttering here and there, and then for some reason or another, the population expands. A small area, but still from an entomological standpoint, quite an interesting problem. And by the way, we can still find the eggs out there lining the needles here. So we are getting some that are still hatching. Well, mentioned sawflies earlier, didn't have the dogwood sawfly, but we're also seeing elm sawfly. Some of you might look at that leaf and say, that's not an elm, John. You're right, it's a willow. The insect's not very good at tree ID. And it does go for elms and willows. Don't ask me what the connection between the two is. I don't know, but they seem to like both. And this is what they look like. You'll find them on the underside of the leaves, and they literally curl up like little cats and quickly devour these. If you find these on your dogwood, again, you have to pull the leaf open, but they'll look quite similar, and they just feed away. But it's one of our defoliators that we find this late season. And then this one I've been getting a lot of pictures of in this last week. This is what we call island coralosis, and it's due to a virus on hackberry trees. By the way, it really doesn't harm the tree. In fact, it looks kind of colorful. But it's really showing up, as you can see in the colors here, and people are worried about it and wondering if it'll spread and will it affect their tomatoes even. Nope, not a problem. And we're still seeing chlorosis due to an element deficiency, iron and manganese, on maples. And notice the difference here is the veins are still green. At this point in the year, you just live with it. Water the tree if it's dry. But otherwise, you really don't need to do any treatments, because treatments are done in the spring for this. And we've discussed this in earlier episodes of the Garden Hour. But I do have to mention this towards the end here, and that is we are seeing fall color already, and that's not a good thing. What's happening is trees are so dry, particularly in the southeast, despite the fact we've had some good rains down there the last couple of weeks, that chlorophyll production has really slowed. So the reds and the yellows are coming out. I'm seeing some silver maples that are turning bright red already. We're seeing some autumn blaze maples that are red. That's too early. That's a sign that the tree is in trouble. So if you're getting fall color, don't take pictures of it. Give the tree some water. That's what it needs right now. And I might add that we're actually seeing trees die. If you go along the James River, you'll find pockets of standing dead cottonwoods. Now, many of them were not very healthy to begin with, but 2 years of drought, and that's how long it's been that way down along the river, the trees are literally dying. And so those mature cottonwoods that cannot tolerate this very well are beginning to fade out. And by the way, in the rotted bases of these trees, you will find these grubs, the flower hermit beetle, but they are not killing the tree. They're just taking advantage of the dead and dying wood. Well, I got about 5 too. Amanda can go over any questions that we might have, but I'm sure everybody here is anxious to find out if that video is any good, and if we get to see a hissing cockroach.
So here's the cockroach.
Whoa!
He's been pretty spicy. The video, so cool. So I'm not gonna play the video because I paused it on the part where you can see the insect most clearly. So I'm going to share my screen real quick so that you can see it. But take a look at that, John. It's a robber fly. It's one of the bumblebee mimics.
Yeah.
So it's a fly. So it's a dipteran, and they are predators. So yes, so it does have a honeybee, but this was not bee on bee violence. This was actually a predatory fly that was catching honeybees. So super cool find. Awesome video. Thank you so much for the zoom in. That really helped. The thing with identifying flies versus bees is that flies have sort of like much larger eyes, sort of in relation to their heads versus bees. And then also the robber flies, they have little furry beards. like when you're looking at a pin specimen, you can see sort of all this stuff. But if you were counting wings, obviously there's only 2 wings. They're folded, so you can't quite tell. But this is just one where I took a look at the head and I was like, oh, yep, absolutely a robber fly. Because yeah, bumblebees don't do this. But it's mimicking a bumblebee to kind of advertise like, oh, I'm kind of harmless. Or also like, oh, I've got a stinger and will like mess you up if you try to mess with me. So yeah, no, super cool find. Thank you for sending that in. But yeah, it's a robber fly, R-O-B-B-E-R. Other species of them will actually steal insects out of spider webs. That's one of the ways that they get their name. And we do have some very cool robber fly species in the state of South Dakota. They can be pretty dang big. So
you know what, they can. And the other thing is, somebody asked, well, can we do a comparison? You know, maybe next week, because you're in Iowa.
Yeah, I'm in Iowa.
Maybe even though I'm the tree guy, I might talk about predatory insects, especially the ones that mimic. And one of my favorites are tiger beetles. Now, they don't mimic anything, but they're the ones on the sidewalk that they sit there, and as you walk up, they'll fly ahead of you again. And they'll fly ahead of you
those
again.
are McCrory Gardens always has a lot of really good tiger beetles.
Oh yeah, they're great.
Well, we might have to throw in some mimics before the end of garden hour season. But yes, I do have the hissing cockroach. Anybody out there, wants a really easy pet? I've got many, happy to share.
They're kind of like bunnies, though.
Although, I'll just give you like a male that would like to be living on his own in a bachelor pad versus a female that maybe might have babies for you. They also just had more babies a couple weeks ago. So I am apparently very good at rearing Madagascar hissing cockroaches. And don't worry, John, none of these have spent the night in any sort of hotels. These are day trip only insects. They don't have wings, so they don't fly, and they don't like it when it gets cold. So they're not going to be overtaking South Dakota. They just make a really nice, easy show and tell insect pet. But with that, we'll go around. Oh wait, there was one more question for John. Somebody did ask, in Deadwood, there have been a number of oaks that have died from the top down. Are they getting enough water, or is there something going on? There aren't any signs of bugs, but the wood is very dry when they cut them down.
You know what? That's a great question. And right after this motorcycle rally, I'm going to get up there and do some looking, because I've noticed that before the rally, my last trip out, a number of dying oaks. It's not drought. There are some diseases that it might be, but you're right. I want to take a look at that too, because there's more than normally should begin to fade away. So yeah, you are correct, but we'll probably have it on in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Good question.
Or in the tree pest alert if it takes that
it will
that long
always be in the tree pest alert. Yeah.
Yep. But we are getting close to 8 o'clock, and I wanted to give Sean especially a chance to give a wrap-up comment. I know you had an event that you wanted to promote real quick, but what do you want folks to take away from this evening?
Yeah, could I share my screen real quick?
Go for it.
Okay, so like Amanda said, I am the director of the Local Foods Education Center in Brookings. That's our student farm out there and teaching farm. And so something new that I'm doing this year is I'm putting on a movie night. So if you're in the Brookings area, maybe you're vacationing to the Brookings area on September 6th, it's a Wednesday. We're watching How We Grow out on the farm. I bought a 250-inch projector screen. We're gonna mount it to the side of our little barn we have out there. And doors are at 7:30, movie starts at 8. You just got to bring your own lawn chair, and we'll literally be sitting within the farm and watching it. So it's gonna be a cool venue. So if you can make it, this is the first time I've announced it. So spread the word.
That's awesome. Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. And I'll say, is Dr. Lang at any way involved in the planning of that?
No, but I did ask her to promote the local foods conference at it, and she'll be talking about the specialty.
I was gonna say, because if she is, it will rain.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah, don't have her come. Don't have her come. All right, tell her it's another night. And by the way, are you gonna show Barbie afterwards? Is this a double feature?
I don't think I can afford the rights to it, but maybe we'll see.
Well, that's awesome. I hope you guys have great weather for that, and probably wear your bug spray. There might be still some mosquitoes out by then. And John, anything to wrap up this week?
No, but I would like a comment from you, and that is, are you seeing the same thing I am? I'm not seeing a lot of cicadas, nor am I seeing the cicada killers as much as I did last year.
So Pierre is like cicada killer central. We have a lot of places that they like to live. I actually just saw one like on my street going home from work today. I haven't, there are cicadas, definitely not sort of as loud as they've been in previous years. It felt like they were coming out a little bit later, but the places that have cicada killers, it's like, they don't have one cicada killer, they've got 20. I've definitely gotten a lot of calls and questions this year from homeowners, especially ones that have areas of bare ground, because that is sort of prime cicada killer nesting area. And they want to know, like, how do I get rid of them, or what do I do? And it's like, well, plant some grass there, make sure that that is a covered area next year. But honestly, they're really cool insects. So I try to encourage people to, let them do their thing, because they're not really aggressive towards people. And, they take a couple cicadas out of the trees.
They do that. The only thing I would mention is that they tend to like to use the soil along sidewalks.
Yes,
and
along sidewalks, along driveways.
Yeah, and when we saw them last year, which high populations, the one little problem they did have is when puppies like to stick their nose in those holes. We see a note here, vermilion seems to be very quiet as well. So you're right, maybe Pierre is cicada central, and Madagascar hissing cockroach.
I know, my little, I did almost throw in a picture of some cicada exoskeletons from when I was in Savannah, because our dog's day cicadas are like pretty big, but these cicada shells were like 1.5 times bigger. It was incredible. There were some big bugs down there.
Good way to end.
Right? I was gonna say, I'm here for like the robber fly absolute highlight of the episode for me. Thank you so much for whoever sent that in. The hissing cockroach and I say good night. We'll catch you next week. We'll have other guests here, not me, but I will be back again in 2 weeks. So until then, happy gardening.
All right. Thanks, everybody.